It is Kali Puja tonight. The heavy tropical air of Kolkata dances to the feverish beat of drums. Sialda station is where the drummers gather, the rhythm of their sticks thundering through the night in this city of 13 million people. But just a few hundred miles to the north, a short overnight train ride from here, there is little celebration in the villages of the Duars. Here in the ripening paddy on this October night, the first skirmishes are taking place in a conflict that will last for several months and is repeated every year. What was elephant habitat for centuries is today broken up by tea estates and habitation. Elephants are running out of space across their range in India and clashing increasingly with people. These fields tell a story of distraught farmers and small groups of elephants struggling to survive across a degraded and fragmented range. It is a seemingly tranquil landscape up in the northern part of the state of West Bengal, along the foothills of the eastern Himalaya. A lot of India's tea is grown here. But with the tea industry in decline in recent years, estates have been closing down, creating widespread unemployment and deepening poverty in an already poor area. Many locals live off their rice and forest produce, often brewing rice beer, which attracts elephants as much as ripening paddy. The landscape is crisscrossed by roads and railways, many of them now being upgraded. In October, as the paddy ripens, these men need to work all night and every night. There are over 300 elephants across this belt, most of them trapped in pockets of forest. Short of food, they are attracted to rice, corn and vegetable crops. The men belong to a squad set up by the Forest Department to drive elephants in a systematic manner back into forest habitat. Their job is to try and control a volatile situation that has seen scores of elephants injured as villagers defend their crops with firecrackers, or worse, bows and arrows and spears and guns. The squad is armed, but the men rarely use their guns. At the most, they will use firecrackers to prompt elephants to move. So this is the Binaguri squad. We're going to an area where elephants were seen a couple of days ago. Basically what this squad does is it patrols their area, which is a patchwork of tea gardens and rice fields and habitation. And they go to areas where elephants have been reported or they have themselves seen elephants a couple of days ago. Confused and angry elephants end up trampling fields and often damaging huts. In the chaos, people are also injured or killed. It is a sad, confrontational situation, even though the villagers all love elephants. They believe implicitly that the elephant is a manifestation of the elephant-headed Hindu god, Ganesh. There have been cases of villagers high on rice beer running out in the pitch blackness to greet wild tuskers, in the belief that Ganesh has come to visit them. Local people can ill afford the loss of their rice crop. This night, the squad happens on a tusker at the edge of a village just off a main road. He is a big animal, probably middle-aged. The men move in to manage the situation before it gets out of hand. The The consequences could be tragic if someone were to walk into this bull in the darkness. This is the problem when the elephant is in an area which is relatively built up. There's a fine line between harassment and guiding the elephant safely out of this area. There's a patchwork of villages and settlements and farms. Their task is to get him out of the habitation, get him out of the fields, for the sake of the elephant as much as for the villagers. He's got a bad injury. He's got a very bad injury on his right foreleg. There he is. Let's go up, join the team. The men have identified the bull. They say several members of a family were killed when he knocked down their hut. Somewhere along the way, someone shot him in the leg. He's going to cross. Light him up. 2 months ago he was tranquilized and the wound cleaned and treated, but it appears to have become very bad again. After some tense maneuvering, the squad succeeds in getting him across the nearby highway and into a tea garden, walking in the direction of the forest. He is clearly in pain as he makes his way through the tea. 4 months after this filming, the men found him in the jungle dead from septicemia. Meanwhile, another squad from the nearby town of Malbazar is tackling a similar situation in their jurisdiction, but in a tea garden. Elephants don't eat tea bushes but can destroy young tea nurseries and uproot shade trees on their way through gardens, or they may stumble into labor quarters. Labor lines are often badly lit, located on old elephant movement routes, and the rice beer brewed by workers is an added attraction. For the men, the priority is to get the elephants out quickly, but without panicking them. The memory of being hounded away from a good meal will stay with these calves forever. This is just the beginning of the harvest season. As the season progresses, the problem will get progressively worse until all the crop has been harvested. Until then, it is like this every night. This kind of conflict has been increasing across India for a while now, presenting new challenges. In 1992, the Indian government set up Project Elephant to focus on habitat protection and look after the interests of the Asian elephant. The historic range of the Asian elephant in India has shrunk dramatically. The challenges before Project Elephant have been immense. Conversion of wild land to agriculture and the expansion of towns and settlements has eaten away at elephant range outside core protected areas. In parts of the country, elephant habitat is being directly destroyed. Iron ore mines in Orissa and Jharkhand, just a few hundred miles south of the tea gardens of the Duars, are ravaging elephant habitat. Iron ore is ripped out of the earth to feed the enormous appetite not just of India's market for steel, but the Chinese market as well. These are all open cast mines and there is no policy on healing the scars they make. With their habitat lost and fragmented, elephants find themselves in close proximity with people and end up disoriented, confused and aggressive, just like in North Bengal. People have retaliated by indiscriminately killing elephants. By the edge of a jungle track in Jaldapara Wildlife Sanctuary, one of the few viable patches of jungles left in the Duars, vets work to prepare a tranquilizer dart gun. Here, the State Forest Department is helping Dr. Raman Sukumar and his team immobilize a big bull elephant, a habitual crop raider, to put a satellite radio collar around his neck. As the team sets out, they see their target, a tuskless male or makhna, but he quickly disappears into the jungle, probably sensing their purpose. After following the big bull for more than an hour, they spot him as he breaks cover in an effort to get away. Seeing him helps the darting team maneuver into range. The darting is successful. The powerful immobilon will take effect well within 20 minutes. The team must be careful while approaching, but also not delay because the elephant should not be down too long. There is a danger of his great body overheating. Makhnas are common in the northeastern jungles. Sadly, like so many others in this area, he carries the painful reminders of arrows, spears and bullets to add to the trauma of confrontation with humans. Dr. Jacob Chiran, one of India's foremost elephant vets, has seen more than his fair share of these terrible wounds. The specially designed collar is a strong one and will not bother the elephant. With luck, it will last well over a year before it breaks or the transmitter fails. The collar will enable them to track his movements, plotting them virtually in real time and placing that information on a website. The information will tell Dr. Sukumar's team and wildlife managers in North Bengal how far he roams and when he is approaching human habitation. When the work is done, a shot or revivon is given to the bull and the team retreats to a safe distance. There are always several moments of anxiety at this point. Everyone prays the animal will get up and recover well. Around 10,000 years ago, someone sat in a cave in central India and painted these images. Even so far back in time, men were already riding captive elephants. Thousands of years after that, a craftsman carved elephants into the stone of the Sanchi Stupa, one of Buddhism's earliest surviving buildings. By the 1st century BC, elephants were deeply ingrained in the ethos of this land and were looked upon as symbols of royalty, prosperity, good luck and fertility. This 17th century mural from Bundi in Rajasthan depicts an elephant fight, a medieval sport in vogue in the princely states of central and western India till as recently as the 1960s. Elephants occupy a space in the mind and spirit of Asia, and India is the heart of the Asian elephant. More elephants are found here today than anywhere else in Asia. It is the elephant-headed god Ganesh, the lucky god, the benign remover of obstacles, the one of quiet but gigantic strength, that finds a place in millions of households in India and across the world. Major public functions are organized across India during Ganesh Puja, but Ganesh is also worshipped quietly in millions of homes with prayers and offerings of flowers and his favorite food, sweets and fruit. Vakratunda Mahakaya, Surya Koti Samaprabha, Nirvignam Kurmedeva, Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada, you of the twisted trunk and massive body, with the dazzle and light of millions of suns, lead me on a path that has no obstacles nor hindrances, clearing the way in all that I do, ever and always. There are around 3,500 domestic elephants in India. Many live in forest department camps in wilderness areas and are used primarily for tourism and patrolling protected forests. They forage in the wild and are also otherwise well fed, in this case with an elephant-sized sandwich of rice and dal in a folded banana stem. They get plenty of water and are usually bathed twice a day and occasionally visited by vets. Elephants living in these camps are possibly the happiest of India's captive elephants. Wild male elephants are attracted to elephant camps, essentially looking for camp females in estrus and for their stocks of fodder. As a result, in some places, female camp elephants regularly mate with wild bulls. This is good for the gene pool of the domestic population. For generations, domestic elephants in India have been used as draft animals in a range of heavy work. Princely states would buy wild-caught and trained elephants to stock their stables. The elite would use the elephants to hunt tigers from their backs. But mostly they were used to do heavy work for the government and private contractors in hilly and thick forests where men and machine could make little headway. Government elephants were on the payrolls and were given pensions along with their mahavats when they retired from heavy work. Many of these elephants came from the northeast, where local tribes such as the Khamtis had a long tradition of catching and keeping elephants. In the days when elephant catching and training was an industry, the Khamtis used a practice known as Mela Shikar. Skilled catchers called Pandis on highly trained elephants called Kunkis would maneuver themselves into the middle of a wild herd, even through the thickest tropical jungle, separate an individual from the rest of the group and lasso it. It was a rough and dangerous art. With the loss of habitat and the decline in elephant numbers, the practice of catching and training was stopped in the 1970s. Now, with forestry operations cut back to save whatever forests are left, there is little work for people like the Khamtis and their elephants. Few Khamtis can afford to keep them today, but some of the best trained elephants are still to be found with them. One of the challenges for Project Elephant is to come up with innovative ideas to help people like the Khamtis and their elephants. Tribals in the northeast and in the states of Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh have been employed as trackers. Kunkis and Pandis are being used to deal with elephant depredation in the northeast, West Bengal and Jharkhand. And Project Elephant also seeks to monitor and regulate the trade in elephants. Until very recently, many elephants at some point in their lives would pass through Sonpur, a few miles from the city of Patna in the state of Bihar. Sonpur has an annual fair or mela, which dates back hundreds of years and is still one of the largest livestock fairs in the world. The atmosphere is still medieval at the fair, which is held to coincide with the religious festival marking the first full moon in November. More than 1 million people stream in from around the region to bathe in the confluence of the Gandak and Ganga rivers, to shop at the bazaar and to celebrate far into the night. And some of them come to buy elephants. Horses, cows, buffaloes and bullocks and other livestock are also sold, but it is the elephant that makes Sonpur special. It was once the world's biggest elephant market. They say princes and merchants sent agents from as far as Central Asia to buy from the hundreds of elephants on the market here. Many of the bulls were sought after by buyers from South India. Today, a large number of tuskers are in the south, maintained by temples and individuals for use in ceremonial occasions, like Kerala's annual Thrissur festival. Private individuals hire out their elephants here for festival after festival, day after day. Project Elephant has been trying to educate forest officers, Mahawats and vets on better care of their elephants. Festival organizers here are advised on how best not to stress the animals that provide such grandeur to their ceremonies. There is something majestic about the patience and dignity with which the great animals emerge, something almost godlike. But the big bulls don't get enough care and become stressed. While they are basically gentle and patient, they are also the only species living in domesticity with man which has not been selectively bred. With the ear-splitting din and the crowds here, it is clear that they are under pressure. There have been several occasions when a big bull's monumental patience has snapped, and vets have had to intervene to sedate an animal that has run amok. Elephants need to be treated well, have enough good fodder and water, plenty of exercise, adequate rest, and plenty of space. Here, for hours under the blazing sun, in the stifling din and press of the crowds at the Puram, man has chained his gods. An effort at a more benign celebration of the elephant is underway in the northeastern state of Assam. Assam has been having serious problems in recent years with deforestation and growing conflict.
It is very worrisome for all of us that Assam, elephant has always been worshipped by people, but in the same place, same Assam, that since the year 2000, some elephants were found to be killed by people using poison.
Project Elephant used the occasion of the Elephant Festival, when close to 200 elephants had gathered, to initiate the process of establishing a database on domestic elephants. A microchip is placed just under the skin behind the left ear. A device is used to read the chip number, and this can then be checked against ownership papers and contribute to the database that is being slowly built up. The scheme, which is making its way across the country, will eventually enable authorities to quickly identify domestic elephants anywhere and have their history available at a glance. Some of the elephants are nervous about being prodded with needles and gadgets and give the Mahawats and vets a rough time. So we're driving on the left bank of the Chilla Power Channel, heading north. This canal effectively divides Rajaji into two halves, the western half and the eastern half. Elephants from the west can rarely cross over to the east. They have only a couple of facilities, including this 3-meter wide bridge. Only lone bulls cross this bridge. Family groups are too insecure to cross it because of the swirling waters below and because they must protect their calves. Wildlife has drowned in this canal. Elephants and other species try to drink from the waters, slip on the steep sides and fall in and drown, or they try and cross and they drown. Here in Rajaji National Park, elephants lead a precarious existence. As summer closes in, they must make do with a muddy pool when the river Ganga, with its cold fresh water straight from the mountains, is only around 300 meters away. But between here and the river is a highway, a railway track, an army camp and settlements. Rajaji is at the northwesternmost tip of the Asian elephant's current range in the wild. And deep inside these forests, more than 20 elephants have been killed on this railway track in recent years. It is a busy line and getting busier. Railway lines passing through wildlife habitat are a problem throughout the country. Yet development demands there should be more trains, and there is pressure for them to travel faster. Stories like these regularly make news on television or on the inside pages of newspapers. Since 1998, across the country, more than 80 elephants have been killed by trains. This calf was killed by a train in North Bengal. Its mother stood by the body for 3 days. Researchers have been working on the issue of railway tracks. The Indian Railways has been asked to take the needs of wildlife into account by slowing down trains in vulnerable areas, fencing some tracks and realigning proposed new tracks. Another issue facing Project Elephant here is communities living inside the forest with their cattle. The Gujars of Rajaji are a case in point. With more than 1,500 families and 10,000 cattle, the ecosystem just cannot take the strain. A long and complex effort at relocating the community has finally begun to show results. Here in Gendikhatta, the former nomads have been given title to their own land. S.S. Bisht, director of Project Elephant, inspects the site and congratulates the Gujars who have moved, significantly reducing pressure on the forest. Project Elephant used ground knowledge in the beginning, and in more recent years state-of-the-art GIS mapping, often in collaboration with non-government conservation organizations. It began by identifying viable elephant habitat, and habitat that had the potential to be viable if protected immediately and restored over a period of time. Dr. Sukumar is a world authority on Asian elephants.
The greatest threat that the elephant faces today is not just the loss of habitat, but the actual fragmentation of habitat into smaller patches of forest. And this creates several problems for the elephant, because you have these elephant groups being isolated in these smaller patches, and these populations are not viable. At the same time, there's a dramatic increase in conflict between elephants and people. Elephants come out and raid agricultural crops, and there's a clear relationship between degree of fragmentation and conflict.
Meanwhile, at Jaldapara, the big Makhna, who was fitted with the satellite radio collar by Dr. Sukumar's team, has been transmitting valuable data. In Bangalore, the team has been mapping his movements in and around Jaldapara. But on some days, staff in Jaldapara don't need the satellite data to tell them where he is. He comes right up to their camp at Holong inside the jungle. He has followed one of the female camp elephants. He is also interested in the rice, salt and molasses that the camp elephants are fed to supplement their diet. But the supplies are protected by an electric fence.
One of the focuses of the Project Elephant is to try and identify corridors which could be which have to be protected or have to be augmented. One of the most important corridors, called Kanyanpur in Bandipur National Park, connects a population of about 6,000 elephants in the Western Ghats with about 2,000 elephants in the Eastern Ghats, and that was established in 2001, and that I consider to be one of the main achievements of Project Elephant.
I'm walking up a hillside in Bandipur National Park at the heart of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. 6,000 square kilometers of jungle spread across 3 Indian states, home to around 8,000 Asian elephants, the largest single population in one place on the planet today.
Bandipur is at the foot of southern India's Nilgiri Mountains. It is a critical reservoir of biodiversity, home to many endangered species. Like the tiger, the elephant is one of Bandipur's flagship species. A mature male tiger may have a territory of well over 100 square kilometers, but elephant herds range over several hundred. Lone bulls range even further. Protecting their habitat successfully means a number of smaller, perhaps less obviously charismatic species are also automatically protected. Bandipur is a tiger reserve and part of the Mysore Elephant Reserve. Elephant movements or migrations are determined essentially by two needs: optimum food and sufficient water. In summer in the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, elephants congregate on the backwaters of the Kabini Reservoir. Water is as important to elephants as it is to people. Along the banks of the Kabini, elephants drink and bathe at least twice a day. They need to drink around 150 to 200 liters of water a day. An adult elephant needs to eat about 150 to 200 kilograms per day and spends about 12 to 18 hours feeding. Bamboo is a particular favorite. With its versatile trunk, the elephant is able to pick the choicest leaves and the most tender stems. As the waters of the reservoir recede, the exposed strip of land between waterline and tree line is covered by lush young grass, which provides excellent forage for elephants and other wildlife. As the dry season progresses, more and more land is exposed to the fierce summer sun. But along the Kabini, water is still available, and the short, nutritious grass is plentiful. Elephants are a matriarchal society. Herds are led by females. The matriarch is generally the oldest cow, and the herd is normally comprised of family members: her calves, her sisters, and their children. Female elephants can conceive at around 15 and will generally give birth once every 5 years. The gestation period is between 20 to 22 months. Normally a single calf is born. A newborn calf typically weighs around 100 kilos. Elephants are devoted mothers. Indeed, the entire herd is very protective of the young. Calves continue to suckle for about 2 to 3 years, though they start feeding on solid matter by the time they are 1. There are deep individual and family bonds in elephant societies. Male calves stay with the mother until they are about 15. Thereafter they have to fend for themselves and often leave the herd within a few years. As teenagers, they love to play and spar. During the annual congregation, males sometimes group together in the vicinity of the herds. As they mature, they test each other, working out the hierarchy. Dominance amongst males is determined largely by size. Here, the bigger bull is clearly asserting his dominance. A big bull can weigh up to 5 tons. Mature bull elephants come into a phase known as must about once a year. During must, a fluid is secreted from the temporal glands. The oozing fluid stains the skin black and has a strong smell that can be detected several hundred meters away. Testosterone levels are elevated during must, and the bulls show greater moodiness and aggression and interest in sexual activity. Mating is preceded by some courtship, when the male places his trunk on her back. Sometimes he is obliged to give chase as well. In this case, a rather long chase. Even here, an expanding elephant population and a largely static forest area creates problems at the edges.
Mr. Bori Gowda has 80 acres of farmland on the edge of Bandipur National Park. His farmland is here and Bandipur National Park is there. And the elephants frequently come here for the water which runs at the edge of his farm and through his farm and for the crops in his farm. So he has put up a solar-powered, elephant-proof electric fence. This is the solar-powered fence. This is a rudimentary fence. There can be many kinds of fences. There can be 7 strands or just 3 strands as you see over here. How does the elephant react? Have you seen an elephant when it touches the fence?
It's something and go.
No animal or human can be killed by this shock. And the government of India, the Project Elephant, is supporting and subsidizing these fences all across the country in elephant range states.
Project Elephant promotes and subsidizes power fencing and other elephant barriers like trenches all over the country wherever cultivation has edged into elephant habitat, and it encourages the participation of local stakeholders in these efforts. Properly maintained power fencing is an effective way of protecting crops that are tempting targets for elephants. In Kerala's Ramballi village, conservation organizations and village communities have joined together to do this. These forest villagers, who like those in North Bengal also grow a lot of rice, coexist uneasily with elephants who often raid their crops. The conflict is not as acute as in North Bengal, but there is crop damage and farmers must still watch over their fields at night when their paddy is ripening. The next morning, it is obvious how the elephant managed to get into the fields. They are thinking animals and often figure out ways to get through electric fences. Bulls use their tusks when they discover they don't conduct electricity. Elephants have also been known to drop branches and entire trees across fences to short them. And sometimes, especially in the case of lone bulls, they simply learn that the shock won't kill them and barge straight through. To help enhance the natural food base for wild elephants, Project Elephant also tries to improve habitat through fodder plantation, water conservation and fire control.
ഈ ആനകൾ കമ്പി എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഈ കൊമ്പുള്ള ആന മാത്രമേ കടക്കാറുള്ളൂ, മറ്റുള്ള കൂട്ടാനൊന്നും കടക്കല്ല.
In Rambali, the villagers repair the fence and have it up and running by the afternoon. In spite of incidents like these, the fence has proved a great asset. Conflict claims victims on either side.
All three of these calves are victims of the man-elephant conflict. All three of them came at different times at around the age of 6 months, but they're all about 2 years old. They came within a short period of each other. Padmaja's mother was electrocuted and died when she came in contact with a high-tension wire, and the other two lost their mothers when their herds were chased away from fields by angry villagers. So they're growing up quite well over here on the outskirts of Bandipur National Park. They have a wonderful environment and they have lots of good grazing and a lot of care and individual attention, which is very important for young elephant calves who have had such traumatic starts to their life.
There is another threat, and a very direct one, to elephants: poaching for ivory. It is rare to see such large tuskers, especially in South India, which has been ravaged by poachers. Other elephant ranges have higher male-female ratios, but virtually none have been left untouched by poaching. There is a total ban on domestic trade in ivory and on the import and export of ivory. Nevertheless, elephants have been killed in large numbers to supply the illegal trade. Records of ivory seizures suggest major demand for Indian ivory items from tourists from the USA, Europe and the Middle East. Indian ivory also finds its way to the Far East to supply the demand for hanko or name seals. I photographed this bull barely 2 weeks before he was found dead in the jungle. A direct consequence of this is the potentially serious issue of sex ratio or quality of population. One of the objectives of Project Elephant is to ensure that the ratio of males to females does not become skewed as it already has in some areas in South India. This boils down to protection. One place where the pressure from poachers is relentless is Kaziranga in Assam. Here, apart from elephants, there is another tempting target for poachers: the one-horned rhinoceros. With the constant pressure, anti-poaching patrols are a key element in the very survival of the endangered species that inhabit this sprawling wilderness. Kaziranga, in the floodplain of the Brahmaputra River, teems with wildlife including tigers, leopards, the Asiatic buffalo and the swamp deer or Barasinga. Elephants are part of the way of life of these men, who must negotiate swamps, tall grasses and thick woodland. For much of the year, the flood-prone alluvial grassland is inhospitable, and elephants are the only means of transport. Poachers are often caught here and in other protected wildlife reserves. While prosecution is sometimes weak and conviction rates are low, men like these are making an impact. Ivory poaching cases, which used to account for more than 60 elephant deaths a year on average, have over the last 2 years gone down to less than 40 a year.
In terms of the wild population, what is the future of the wild Asian elephant in India?
With the interest that the governments are showing, with the interest that the NGOs and the other conservationists are showing, even the people themselves are so conscious about the elephants. I hope elephants should have a good future in the country. And the second thing is that we have also to depend on one particular quality of the elephants, their adaptability. Luckily, elephants are very intelligent animals, they are very adaptable animal, and they are also adjusting to the new scenario. So I hope with the attempts of the government, with the attempts of these non-governmental agencies and other people who love elephants, and with the adaptability of the elephants themselves, I feel elephants should be there. I don't see any reason to be pessimistic on that account.
It is difficult to count elephants precisely because of the nature of their habitat and because they roam large areas. But we do know that wild elephant populations are increasing, though slowly, in most parts of India, except in the northeast, where the toll from habitat destruction, poaching and conflict-related killing is significant. It is estimated that there are somewhere between 26,000 and 28,000 wild elephants in India today. It is a mixed bag and often a struggle, for the elephants certainly, and also for those involved in the battle to save the forests that are their home. Project Elephant has already established over 20 elephant reserves across the country. One of them is the Shivalik Elephant Reserve. Corbett National Park is the beating heart of this wilderness, stretching from Rajaji in the west to the Sarda River in the east. Here in Corbett, life is still as it should be for elephants. One almost forgets that in many other places, the great mammal is running out of space. But hopefully for generations to come, there will still be places like Corbett. Places where nature and elephants are as they always have been and always should be.
Yeah.